Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. As you can see in the picture today, let's start the story of what if issei lost and became a spider issei. Earth? Planet Earth, Japan. A 10-year-old boy wakes up feeling very tired after not having slept at the time his mother told him to. He rubs his eyes as his vision adjusts to the morning light and sees the calendar next to his bed. He breathed a sigh of relief. Saturday was good for him. At least on those days his mother didn't complain about him waking up late or falling asleep with his face in the books he took from the city library. Honestly, he didn't think he had the talent or ability for very complex or clever things, but he always felt a strange drive to learn new things. Especially learning what it took to create things. He remembered very well when he completely learned a few programming languages and managed to copy a game from scratch for his own amusement. Or when he became interested in robotics and using various scattered parts, managed to create a simple car. So what started as a strange impulse became something fun and a hobby. He sighed before getting up from his bed and going to the bathroom. He had to get ready soon. His mother didn't like him missing breakfast because he slept too much. When he arrived in the living room, he saw his father watching the news while his mother prepared breakfast. She looked calm as ever, and when he approached, she immediately grabbed him in a hug and started playing with his hair. "Mickey, good morning, issei. Issei ukayasan. Don't lift me up like that. Gora, don't try to stop your mother, son," he said in a playful way. The boy fixed his disheveled hair and sat at the table as his father turned up the volume on the television to listen to the news while they ate. In the middle of breakfast, the international news was showing the state of New York City, a few months after the attack. The destruction caused by an alien invasion was vast, even with the intervention of the supergroup that was called the Avengers. Most of the members were well known, such as Captain America, a hero from the past who participated in World War II, Iron Man, who was Tony Stark, the millionaire genius who built his own super armor, and the Green Giant, who was called Hulk and who had appeared fighting another monster a few years earlier. The other three members were not recognized on the same level as the others, but were called Thor, Black Widow, and Hawkeye. The six of them fought together to save the city and the world from that invasion. Even so, there were casualties and destruction. It wasn't something inevitable to begin with. But another thing that happened was the public opinion about these Earth's mightiest heroes and their incredible popularity. There were even little dolls of them, even of the Hulk, who was previously hunted by the American army. However, this was not something that would impact Japan at the moment. Maybe in time, but not now, although Issei was always impressed by that armor. The ability to create one for himself was something he very much wanted to achieve. One of the reasons he's trying so hard to learn everything related to robots and building things. Maybe in a few years he would have the ability, or the opportunity. Time and space break. 8 years later, Ko Academy, College Division. An 18-year-old Issei was seen doing some calculations for a project he would show at the science fair. He delved deeply into robotics, programming, and engineering, but kept to a few things so as not to overwhelm himself, and because he didn't think he was capable enough to become proficient in several different areas. The dark circles under his eyes showed this clearly. For someone young to have those dark areas under his eyes showed that he had spent quite a few sleepless nights to be at the level he was now. But he felt proud. Studying so hard made him more focused, more intelligent, and even less likely to his problems inherited from his father's side of the family, though he still had some episodes because of the only two friends he had. Matsuda and Motohama were just as bad as him, and Issei would admit that he once followed the two to the kendo club's changing place, but stopped after seeing that he was the one who got beaten up 3 out of 5 times while the two escaped. That's why one day he spoke to the student council and told them where the holes where he and the other 2 idiots were peeking were, and the 3 were forced to cover them. At least things were looking up for him. He was getting good grades, he was getting good opportunities in a job related to what he liked, and of course, he was thinking about future opportunities. It probably wouldn't be somewhere big like Stark Industries or Oscorp, which have headquarters in Kyoto, but he could very well find one at Kamizawa Robotics or Fuyuki Industries. They were both fairly large companies that only had headquarters in other nearby cities, well, except for the first one, which had 2 headquarters in 2 other regions. Even so, neither of them had headquarters in other countries. However, that didn't matter much to Issei at the moment, as long as he could get a job. The only thing he felt worried about was finding female company. For some reason, he had always been turned off by certain people, mostly girls, because of things he found to be idiotic nowadays, like hair color, eye color, and even certain personality traits. He didn't know what it was, but whenever he was developing an interest in a specific woman or type, something seemed to whisper in his ear, and that interest simply disappeared along with a chill running through his body. He didn't understand it, but he found it very strange. In addition, he also had a slight distrust of people with certain characteristics, usually being redheads, nuns, and he was also kept away from most of the children who were his neighbors when he was younger. He also found it strange that he felt a certain discomfort around some animals. Cats, foxes, crows, especially ravens. There was something about those black feathers and focused eyes that even terrified him. Issei simply sighed as he waited for the time to finally go home and prepare his resume and get an internship at one of the 2 companies he wanted. Not that he had much of a chance, but he liked to think that he was capable of doing something when he put his mind to it. After all, studying robotics and mechanics was what led him to truly interesting things. Not that his life was boring, but he felt he needed something different from the norm, and this was the best he could achieve. Too bad he was wrong about that. Time skip night. A female figure wearing a red cloak and glasses observed from a rooftop as the youngest member of the Haida family returned home alone. This woman, Julia Carpenter, had a calm face, but she was worried about the direction her actions would take. She raised her hand where on her back was a strange spider. The abdomen and a good part of its body had a blue and red coloration. Its eyes were also different, almost seeming like a demonstration of consciousness, or perhaps understanding of its purpose. The red-haired woman let out a sigh as she placed the spider on her shoulder and jumped nimbly between the rooftops until she passed over Issei without being noticed and dropped the spider right on top of him. The little spider grabbed the boy's backpack and walked until it reached his hand, where it could finally do what it was set to do and fulfill its life's mission. Yummy! Issei, ouch! Damn! He shakes his bitten hand. What the hell? Is that a spider? He says as he sees the spider walking on the floor. Man, my mom is going to go crazy. No, I just have to hide it, everything will be fine. Well, he started walking back to his house as he began to stagger, and his vision became blurry. He fell to the ground and his head began to hurt. It started out mild, but with each passing second it became much worse. And then when he managed to get up, the visions began. A red-haired girl appeared in his mind and he fell to the ground on his knees. More people appeared as his head hurt more and more. But the physical pain was only the beginning. The vision showed him his parents, friends, and other people he didn't know but felt had some level of importance to him. But his family, and these people, they were suffering, just so they could get to him. And it didn't stop even when he started suffering. He didn't understand why he was seeing himself being humiliated. He hadn't hurt anyone even though he had so many flaws. He didn't understand why Rias and Aquino were hurting him with their magic just to boost the Uzumaki's ego. Wait, Rias and Aquino? Uzumaki? Why were those names important? And why did he feel so much hatred? More visions appeared and his entire body began to ache as they passed by. He remembered Parker pleasuring himself with Kuroka and Zenobia, but he still couldn't tell who they really were. More visions and more unfamiliar and similar people appeared. Ravel, Kaneko, Ross, Drake, Asia Deku, and several others that he couldn't recognize, but hated anyway. Inevitably, due to the pain he was suffering, he ended up having blood running from his eyes, nose, and ears. But he wasn't the only one suffering. As Julia was leaving, thinking her mission was accomplished, and thinking she would have to meet the new Spider Totem in a few months, she began to have several visions of Issei dying in hundreds of different ways. Most of them were by their own hands to end the pain they were feeling. The others were due to blood loss or suffering brain death. She mentally cursed herself for thinking it would be that simple. The universe and its laws were basically a patched cloth at the moment, and Issei was the former pillar of another world. It was obvious that some problem would occur. She was arrogant to think that if she minimized his presence in the beginning it would be something effective. She left the alley she was in and jumped across the rooftops to where Issei was writhing. She saw him coughing and spitting out some blood. She stopped on top of a pole and climbed down from it to help the brown-haired man. The older woman placed her hands on his head and used her psionic abilities on him to ease his pain and control his visions. Issei who? Julia should don't worry, it'll pass soon. I'm sorry. Good job, Madam Web. You barely got your first spider totem from this new universe, and he's having several internal hemorrhages. She managed to put him to sleep and then picked up his unconscious body and took him to his family's house. Luckily for her, no one was there. His parents had to go out with some friends from school who they kept in touch with. She went upstairs and went to his room, where she placed him on the bed. Sighing, Julia placed her hands on his head and began to use her powers to help the young man deal with this crisis she had put him through. Next day, Issei woke up with a terrible headache. His vision was very blurry and it took him a while to adapt to the light coming from his window. When he finally managed to see properly, he could see that his vision was different. He could see much more clearly and perceive things that would have been difficult for an ordinary human to see before. He could have sworn he saw strands of hair on the clothes that were on the chair next to his computer desk. He also realized that those pieces of clothing were the ones he was wearing yesterday, and that he was only wearing boxer shorts on his bed. The strangest thing was that he had a lot of defined muscles. Muscles that looked like someone who had been going to the gym for years. He wasn't fat or very thin before, just very average, but this change was strange. He looked around his room and noticed something strange on the floor, a strand of hair. Judging by its size, it belonged to a woman, but that was the least of it. What gave him several strange sensations, mainly déjà vu, was its color. Issei red hair? Rias, shouldn't I be in the void that bastard left me? Why am I in my old home? I have the answers. Julia appears in the middle of his room, startling him with her sudden appearance. She kept a calm and serious expression while keeping her hands in the pockets of her coat. He stands up, not caring about her nakedness. She was blind after all. What he didn't understand was how this information reached him. Until one moment, everything made sense when his mind was organized. Issei, the reaction cinema, that god of the multiverse Parker. He stared at her. Finally recognizing her. Issei, Julia Carpenter, the irresponsible Madam Web. Julia, you remember that. Can you remember the rest? Issei, remember? I want to forget. Why did you give me back those memories? I could have remained someone very insignificant to the world without all this shit in my head. I could very well live without remembering them. Drag, everything. He punched the wall and inevitably created a hole the size of his fist. He looked around in surprise and confusion, until he remembered the spider that had bitten him, and considering who was in his room, the young man could already have an idea of what had happened. Issei, you gave me spider powers? Julia, I just threw a spider at you. It did the rest. Issei, no, wait, Aika. He sat on his bed as he put his hands on his face. He stared at the ground for a few moments as he tried to process the recent events and recover his memories of his past life. He adopted a serious face and looked at the redhead who was still in the middle of his room. He looked at himself again and sighed as he realized the similarities. Issei, how ironic. I became a devil because of a redhead who appeared in my room, and now I find out that I became a spider hybrid because of another redhead in my room. He spoke tiredly, trying to hide his stress. Julia, and apparently I have a problem with brown-haired boys who make jokes to relieve stress. Issei, just tell me what's going on, he says as he searches for clothes. Julia scratches her own hair as she sighs heavily. She also didn't like talking about all that. Julia, as you know, after we were summoned to that multiversal cinema, our original worlds and a few others were destroyed because of the actions of that self-proclaimed multiversal god. What you don't know is that the Great Weaver, the entity that takes care of the web of life and destiny, managed to bring those fragments together to create a new universe. Of course, she needed the help of other entities, but they managed it in the end. Issei, right, but why? What good could come from the remains of dead worlds? Julia, basically, to minimize the damage. The amount of worlds destroyed was huge, which caused great damage to the web of life and fate, but since some were just variations of the same world, we were able to make this new one without any problems, she says, making a translucent web appear in the air, above their heads, but at one point the threads were cut and dull. Until a spider, also translucent, appeared and began to fix them, despite being at a low speed. Julia, most of the worlds used were basically variations of my original world, belonging to what is called the Marvel multiverse. The rest came from other worlds discarded by that false god. At the same time as she spoke, some images of shards came together and formed the image of a crystal with the image of a galaxy in the middle. Issei watched this attentively as he thought about the situation in which this world was made. Issei, basically, this world was made in an attempt to prevent an imbalance in the multiverse. Julia, from this multiverse, to be more specific. Since fragments from completely different worlds were used, we were also able to connect to other multiverses. Issei, oh, that's right. Now I remember, the Justice League multiverse, for example, had infinite Earths, but then it changed to just one, then to 52, and then it went back to being an infinite multiverse. The Marvel multiverse always had infinite Earths, but each of the two had a prime Earth. Julia, exactly. Earth 0 and Earth 616 are the main universes of each of these two multiverses. Each of those worlds that were connected because of that multiversal cinema, and now because of this new world, belong to a different multiverse. And now, a new Spider Totem has been created to help in the repair and stabilization of this multiverse and the others that we are connected to. Issei, so he stands up. Does that mean that now that the old Parker isn't here I have to put up with the shit he had to carry? He asked in a tone bordering on a threat. Julia, not exactly. We know very well that you suffered a lot because of the author's adoration of Spider-Man, the other pillars and the hatred he had for you. But we only need you to be a Spider Totem. If you want to ignore your powers in any situation is not your problem. We understand that, but unfortunately, Issei, trouble will come to my family, friends, and loved ones who might get hurt, blah blah blah. I know. I once had a god-killing dragon living in my soul. I know that power is capable of attracting the attention of others. What I want to know is if this is a bad joke, or if you have a reason to choose me. Julia, you are a pillar, that already qualifies you as a candidate. But you see little value in yourself. In case you forgot, you changed the lives of many people. Despite your flaws, you strive to improve and have no enthusiasm for fighting for those who matter. Issei simply laughed at that as he sat back down on his bed. He had barely gotten these new powers and already he felt like shit. He knew very well what it meant to be a Spider-Man. Pain, sacrifice, and loss were very common things in a Spider-Man's life. And don't even get me started on loved ones being killed. Issei, I'd rather become a cyborg than have those spider powers. All it'll lead to is suffering and misery. It'll be just like my stay in that damned movie theater, except it'll be slow instead of immediate. Julia, no, you won't. She holds his hand. Listen, Issei, you don't have to be like Peter. It's true that you were put on a path to become a scientist, and you gain these powers now, but you don't have to act like him or become a hero. You can just learn to control your powers to protect your family, study as always, and relate to other people. It's very likely that someone else will emerge to be a Spider-Man in the future. Issei, but then I'd be letting someone else take on too much of a burden and watch their life get destroyed little by little. He looks at the ground. And I don't know if I can ignore that. I still hate them and want revenge, but I don't want anyone innocent to suffer because of my choices. He let go of Julia's hand and thought for a while. His head stopped hurting a little and he started to think about what he should do. He looked at his hands as he clenched and unclenched them, checking their strength. He wondered if it would be right to just pretend nothing had happened and live a normal life. He had no real responsibility. There were many heroes and organizations around the world and none of them knew of his existence. He could simply carry on as if nothing had happened, but he knew that standing still was just as bad. He still remembered the upbringing his parents had given him in those two lives and thought of the worried looks they had given him in both worlds. And of course, despite still being that perverted idiot, something that is practically impossible to change in his family, the life he led made him smarter. Enough to think of everything that could go wrong if he simply ignored what was going on around him. It wasn't just innocent people who would be caught in the crossfire. Their parents, their friends, and anyone else in the city could get hurt. All because he wanted to be selfish and use his suffering as an excuse to let others suffer without even trying to do anything to help. He sighed as he ran his fingers over his eyes. He turned to Julia and began to speak decisively. Issei, look, it's okay. I'll actively help. But I hope you'll also help me when I need it. Especially if my parents are in danger. Julia, thank you, Issei. Issei, don't thank me. It would be idiotic to have powers and be unprepared for anything that came my way. Julia simply nodded and opened his bedroom window to leave, but before she did, she remembered something. Julia, oh sure, I saved my number in your phone. I work for S.H.I.E.L.D. and go on spy missions, but I'll get a private ship so I can come when you need help, she said before jumping out the window. The brown-haired man sighed, thinking that he had placed a huge weight on his shoulders. He looked once more at his hands and feet as he noticed how light his body was. He stared at the ceiling of his room and a thought planted itself in his head. Issei, well, since we're here. He braces himself and does a somersault. Despite staggering a little, his feet stay stuck to the ceiling and he gives a slight smile. He is impressed, and when he lets go, he manages to land on his feet. Issei, cool, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. I need to improve everything: powers, body, and intelligence. Then money and resources. I won't let anyone close to me suffer. And to do that, I need to take advantage and create my opportunities. It took about a week, but he adapted to his new powers. The physical super attributes were the easiest, but the sixth sense and the ability to stick to anything were a little harder to get used to. Despite having a relatively good start in the second, it took him a little longer to control exactly when he wanted to be sticky. It took him a while to get it right since his head wasn't in the right place. It was actually quite interesting, and he discovered that he could use it all over his body, unlike Parker, who could only use it on his feet and hands. Unfortunately, he lost a shirt to figure this out. The back got stuck in his back when he tried to forcefully pull it off. Oh, and he seemed smarter too, but that was the only difference. No organic web, no bioelectricity, no rush. But it was better than nothing. While he could upgrade himself later, he just had to learn how to create something that would give him those capabilities. He was already far more intelligent than his original self, and now that he was in a strange fusion where the main ingredient in the mix was the universe that the intelligent ones ruled, he should learn more over time. Honestly, he still had a lot of things that were worrying him. He remembered the theater of the multiverse very well and everything he saw when he wasn't ignoring the pain in his body, and he knew how dangerous this new world could be. There were alien invasions every Thursday and threats from other dimensions every Monday. And in all honesty, the beings that Issei found most dangerous and deadly were on this planet. And he wasn't thinking about demons or gods, he was thinking about humans. Like Victor Von Doom, he could evolve from an enemy of the fantastic superfamily to a global threat in which several teams needed to unite to have a chance. All depending on the plan he had. And despite being smarter and having spider powers, he felt like he was back to when he was that perverted idiot from before he was impaled by a spear of light, because he knew it could happen in a much easier and more painful way now. Issei sighed, these thoughts won't get me anywhere. What I need right now is to focus on creating a solid foundation for myself first, and I can't depend on Julia right now. The Avengers, X-Men, and a few other groups and heroes exist in this world, so I don't need to worry too much. He knew very well what he needed to do to officially become Spider-Man and begin his vigilante career. Make a suit, create the homemade web fluid, create the launchers, but those were things he could sort out later. The important thing now was to get money, a place to work, and materials. He was thinking about taking a chance and getting an internship at the Oscorp headquarters that existed in the city, but he also wanted to improve his knowledge of technology, and Stark Industries was the best place. In fact, now that he paid attention, he remembered 2 other companies. But they didn't seem important at the moment. The important thing was him and his development. Issei, let's take it easy. First, I need to think about the safest option that will give me the most advantages. Then, I need to get an internship at a company, and while working, I can increase my knowledge. Fortunately, my brain has also improved due to my new physiology, so I can delve into other areas. While he didn't think he could become a jack-of-all-trades right away, Issei was thinking far ahead. Outfits for different occasions, different types of gadgets, his own equipment, a personal lab, maybe even his own AI. It could all be within his reach if he chose the right path. Issei also, I have to prepare for a possible interview. No matter what it is, I'll need to demonstrate that I'm fit for the position. I might need to prepare some ideas. He thought for a moment and decided to focus on small things that could probably be useful. Of course, he would just keep it on paper since he didn't have the necessary materials, but it was better to prepare now. Time and Space Break Co-College. At the moment, the brown-haired man was in the library alone at a table while checking his phone in one hand and writing in a notebook with the other. He was looking for tech companies that were looking for interns or assistants, even if it was just to clean the equipment. At least that way he could get access to some documents and data to do his own research. Maybe he could even learn enough to start his own company. Unfortunately, there was nothing in Oscorp or IS Stark Industries, but he found something similar in others that existed in the city. Kamizawa Robotics and Fuyuki Industries. The former focused on advanced robotics technology, cyber engineering and military research, while the latter was basically focused on biotechnology and genetic engineering. Apparently both companies were in need of assistance to help with standard things. Setting up and changing peripherals, maintaining and repairing hardware, developing some of their own projects, and more things like that. A little curious, he decided to see if he could find out who worked at these companies online. The first one he looked up was Kamizawa Robotics, and his impression was that it was a family business, since apparently the current CEO, Hikaru Kamizawa, was the son of the founder and former CEO. Apparently he is a great engineer like his father, and his current goal was to develop uses for nanotechnology. Issei quickly became interested in this. Nanotechnology had many uses if it was well developed. He decided to look around a bit more and saw a name that caught his attention, Otoya Okabe. He decided to look up more information about him online on a website that contained articles he had published, if he had given any lectures, and noticed a few things that he found interesting but also very familiar. Issei expert in radiation, robotics engineering, cybernetics, and working on high-tech prosthetics. His body stilled for a second. It could very well be a coincidence, but he had to admit that it qualified him as a suspect for a future event. Issei, is this guy going to become a Dr. Octopus? Shouldn't he be in the US? He thought for a moment if it was even possible. But he remembered one detail: he was a Spider-Man now, which meant he would have to deal with villains attacking the city he was responsible for. Honestly, he thought he would move to the United States at some point because of a shadow action by S.H.I.E.L.D. being initiated by Julia, so that he would have less problems. Issei, at least I won't have to explain or have to worry about my parents with a sudden change. He put his phone and pen aside as he thought about what he should do. It could just be him being paranoid, but he always had a way of finding himself in the middle of bizarre situations, and now, in this patchwork world, a large percentage of things were possible. He just lay down on the table he was on while feeling a little tired. He knew he would regret it, but he didn't know it would be so soon. Issei, maybe I can call Julia and ask for hand-to-hand training. And a light slap on his back caused him to look back and see a very familiar face. One of the few people who were a remnant of his old world. Aika, hey nerd, how are you? She says, sitting down next to him. Issei, hey, what's up, Aika? Normally you only come near us to make fun of us. He also looked at her with a mocking smile. Issei, also, why am I the only nerd? Did you forget that when we were younger you were basically obsessed with biochemistry and genetics? Aika, oh, that was a phase. I got interested in girly stuff much later and even stopped watching stuff related to it. Issei, ah, but I remember you saying you wanted to create a serum to eat chocolate without any consequences. Aika, in my defense, this is a dream come true for many men and women. I mean, who wouldn't want to have a six-pack and eat a cake and milkshake without much worry? Issei, well, for a guy who's more focused on robots, I know you'd have to make a person's metabolism much faster, something on the level of Captain America. Wait, my current biology allows for that, right? Aika, back to the main topic, tell me, what's bothering your little head from above? Is it a better view of the curves of the Kendo Club? Issei, you know I was the one who showed them where they were and helped fill in the holes, right? Aika, huh? But they were complaining about more holes just yesterday. Issei, Matsuda and Motohama made holes again. Aika, no, but apparently they're looking for the culprits through the security cameras. Issei, well, since this has nothing to do with me, I won't get involved in it. And speaking of what you wanted to know, I'm looking for technology companies that are looking for assistants or interns, even if it's for something basic. Aika, you too? I've been looking for some jobs in the fields I'm studying and I found one at Fuyuki Industries. I'm going for an interview the day after tomorrow. Issei, really? What exactly are you going to be? Aika, I can't say exactly, but I plan to become an assistant to a scientist who works there. Issei, good for you. I think I'll apply to be an assistant at Kamizawa Robotics. I don't always trust my intuition, but something tells me I should go there. I'll learn about robotics, I'll get experience with another scientist, and I'll be able to take notes on anything I might learn there. Plus, the bonus of getting paid. Aika, speaking like that, it almost sounds like you want to join a company just to take advantage of it. Issei, that's basically it. Who knows? Maybe I can even do it. But before that, I need to sell some things. Time and space break next day. Issei had just sold the last of his manga collection from his room. Ever since he got his powers, he started selling some things that were in his room that he no longer needed or that had a certain value, including your must-have collection of deep romance stories. Issei, this will be worth it. Now, he had a good amount of money and could buy several things for his plan. The first was equipment for himself. An electronic soldering kit was essential, along with some materials. For the rest, he wanted to buy USB sticks and some memory cards. But luckily he found some that had been thrown away while searching at night, along with some more components and specific materials in the trash. In fact, he's been doing this ever since Julia turned him into a spider person. He usually gets on his bike and goes rummaging through the trash of buildings that had machinery stored there. He used a backpack to carry the parts he dismantled, and to hide his identity he wore a mouth mask and a hoodie. And to hide what he found, he put it in the basement, which was his only use since he made it his little laboratory. Being pleased with the savings, he also spent some time researching what he needed to create his own web fluid and where to buy it, until he realized he could use the chemicals present in his college building. After a few trials and failures, he found the right formula and could focus on creating his next major gadgets: the web shooter, the web cartridges, and a utility belt. Young Haida was now in the basement of his house, setting up his work table to begin creating these technologies. First, he would need to develop his own design for them and find a way to make them functional. Issei, first the launcher. I want it to be below the uniform so it doesn't have to be too thick. They have to be light enough that I don't feel any difference or get in the way of their weight. As he spoke, he drew the classic model of a web shooter in his notebook. He also listed the components to create it, and soon began to draw its internal structure, where the cartridges would be placed, what would pierce the cartridges, and where the web would come out. Issei, next the belt. I'll use a tactical belt buckle and a leather buckle to start. Pouches are easy to make, and my priority right now is to have enough webbing. I'll think about adding other things later. He looked at the web fluid formula and thought of a few possibilities. Unfortunately, he would have to wait until he had more resources. Issei, honestly, the cartridges are the easiest, so I can leave them for last. But any special webs will take time. I'll also have to wait a while to create a tracker and the like. But there's one thing I can do. He put his notes aside and grabbed some parts and components, and USB sticks and memory sticks from his electronic soldering equipment. Issei, alright, let's make this spider drive. I'll need to use it to get data and not get caught. I'll make it have a large storage capacity, and then I'll configure it and encrypt it so the chances of someone finding out what I took are lower. He looked at some of the main objects he wanted to use for his first official gadget. He also remembered that he would use his laptop to test if the flash drive was functional, and then he would use his bedroom computer to make modifications to the USB. Issei, fortunately, the base flash drive is 256 gigabytes, and the memory cards range from 16 to 64 gigabytes, and I should be able to fit 3 or 4 inside. Of course, I'll have to make a case myself, but it'll be worth it. One of the points that Issei defined in his journey as Spider-Man was that he would take everything within his reach to increase his knowledge and power. He could very well get the blueprints for the mechanical arms, the formula that turned Norman into the Green Goblin, Connor's lizard serum. Plus he could get any equipment from his future enemies. Issei, but that also means I need to upgrade the tools I have here, like my own personal computer. I would have to have at least a supercomputer of my own. He wrote that possibility down for later. He didn't have enough funds for that either. In fact, he didn't even have the space for a computer of that level, but that was just for now. He might as well do a few jobs here and there while still picking up parts that some people didn't want. A thought quickly came to Issei's mind. Issei, actually, I could even steal some pieces of technology. He stretched in his chair. Not from the damage control building, but from Oscorp in case there's an attack on their building. Or maybe from robots that are built to kill me. That might work, but let's focus on what I can do now. He grabs the components and tools he needs and starts disassembling and soldering the parts into his new custom flash drive. After making changes to it, and making sure it is functional, he will brainstorm some ideas for technologies he could present in an interview or questions that could be asked of him. He also created a resume with his qualifications, areas of expertise, general skills, and other important skills. He also intended to study a little and reinforce what he already knew to have better confidence. Time and space break 3 days later. Young Hayato was getting ready with the best clothes he had, a white dress shirt, black jeans and black dress shoes. He looked at the building that must have 50 floors. Once he was able to confirm that his spider drive was functional and had modified it so that no one could discover its use, he made an appointment for an interview on the company's website and was given an interview for today. He had to send an email with his qualifications and other documents, and there were other people participating today, but at least he got an interview, even if he has competition. He took a deep breath and began walking until he entered the building. An important step in his journey was being taken. Issei, there are a lot more candidates than I expected. He looks around at the young people who were in the same waiting room as him. There were 10 people including him, but only one of them was close in age to Issei. The others seemed to be 25 or older. Most of them seemed to want an executive position or similar, but Issei noticed that some of them didn't seem to care much about what the place actually did. Issei, people like that are only here because of connections. They probably got a favor or are related to someone with money. Not that it mattered, he could very well show off some of his skills and knowledge to ensure success in his hiring. Within a few minutes, they were divided into 2 groups and each group went to different rooms with an instructor each to be tested. Which was relatively easy for Hayato, considering that they were only asked a few basic questions and the advanced ones weren't too difficult either. The real fun began when they were told to test their robot programming skills. Considering that Issei had been doing this ever since he got his own computer, it was child's play. The instructor was quite surprised at how quickly he finished and at the program he had actually made. His resume was also very good and perhaps he gained some points for treating others better than the other group, where some of them cursed the instructor for not showing the respect he deserved. After a quick unknown interview and a few quick questions, that meeting was over, and since there were so many candidates, it was decided that they would select the ones who had performed best and send a company email or receive a phone call. Fortunately, the instructors also said that they would give a good recommendation to those who were not chosen. Some sighed in relief, and others were clearly holding back their anger at not being accepted. Meanwhile, Issei simply thought about the things he would have to do when he got home. Even if it didn't work out, he would try somewhere else. He had already done his part here. Now he just had to wait for the result. It wasn't like he had to start fighting right away next week, but he wanted to finish his equipment. Time break. Issei very well web launcher version 1.8, beginning testing. A single web launcher was on Issei's right wrist. He was doing several repetitions of the same steps. Creating the launcher, testing, failing, analyzing, improving, and trying again. He had done several tests and modifications since he made the first launcher and had encountered several problems. The web was prevalent, the button didn't work, the web cartridge exploded before or at the moment of firing, in short, a big mess. Fortunately, the web dissolved in about an hour, and the damage wasn't too much. Not to mention that he also took advantage and created a solvent for his webs before starting to build the launchers. Speaking of which, thwip, a thread of web was fired and stuck to the wall of the basement that Issei was in. The brown-haired man smiled at the achievement, and quickly got rid of the web that he fired. Now he needed to give the final touches to his launcher. Which in fact was not much, just a red light that warned when he needed to recharge the web. He intended to create a stronger, longer-lasting version of his web and an acidic version, but it would require more time and resources. As he finished making his other launcher to form a pair, he thought about what he needed at the moment. Issei, now all that's missing is a uniform. After that, I'll practice web swinging, different ways to use it, and other tricks I can come up with. But still, I need a lot of things, and I can't steal from the college whenever I need them. He looked around. He had a lot of pieces of technology that he had scavenged from the trash, and they were good and usable, but they weren't permanent. As he picked up, analyzed, and sorted through the pieces he had, he put his hand to his head and thought about what he could do right now with what he had. Issei, I think the first thing I should do is protect myself digitally. I think I can build a better computer with what I have here. I already did that with Aika's. But I'll need a few more parts. Or maybe I can use the equipment in one of the college labs. God, I need a lab. As he began to create a blueprint for his ghost computer, he was also thinking about how he would program his own operating system or perhaps modify one for his own needs. Fortunately, he wasn't too concerned about parts as he had plenty of them, including parts from several consoles. Since the basis of this world was Marvel, even the video games were much more powerful than usual. Issei, at least that's a good thing. People are too arrogant to think of using something as trivial as console parts to repurpose into something better. And there's no way a teenage or young adult would create something like that. Speaking of which, how's Aika doing? I know she's at Fuyuki Industries, but I don't know who she became an assistant to. He was a little worried about this because he knew very well that the number of enhanced beings and super weapons that are created through laboratory errors was very large. He could count on one hand the number of people who got powers or super equipment because they wanted them. Issei, well, I haven't really introduced myself as Spider yet, so it might still be a while before villains appear. But I'm still a little worried about her. I just hope Aika and those other two don't get caught up in something dangerous. How wrong he was. Break of time and space. Past Aika on a few days before to the present. Aika Kiryu, a beautiful girl with golden eyes and brown hair tied in braids on both sides. A promising young woman in the areas of chemistry and biology, as well as a natural talent for genetics. Having worked hard and with great love and effort, she became the assistant of the incredible geneticist at Fuyuki Industries, Dr. Bayoma Hebikawa. He was an incredible 36-year-old man who was known to be one of the best in his field in the country. He was also known to be as good a husband and father as he was a scientist. He had pictures on his desk of his family. A set of twins who seemed to love their parents more than anything, and he always smiled when he looked at them. She had learned a lot from him, and had earned several college credits and a good amount of money for herself. Aika, and to think that I came here as a simple organizer. Now I'm becoming the right hand of a great geneticist. She was smiling in a nice, happy way, but she didn't really care, and she didn't really care if she looked like a child in her excitement. And she wasn't going to let one of her 3 idiot friends know how happy she was about it. But the real reason she was so happy wasn't her current position or her salary, but what she was working on. She was helping Dr. Hebikawa with a personal project of his. To Aika it was something so revolutionary, so fantastical, and she was being a part of it. Aika, what he wants to create could be as amazing as the serum that created Captain America of the United States. She looked again at the computer models of various snakes and their DNA. Dr. Hebikawa was having coffee and would be back soon, but she still couldn't see what was missing to complete the project. The serum he was working on was a serum that would grant humans the ability to become immune to any snake venom in the world. Not only that, but also several diseases that could be transmitted by them, to which they had immunity. The problem was that in order to do this, they were putting some foreign DNA into the human body. So the problem was not making the serum work, but keeping it stable so that the snake DNA didn't harm the human DNA. Aika, but we've been running dozens of simulations, and we still can't stabilize this damn thing. She thinks, running another simulation, pending, failure. Evidence of a mutation process capable of generating death. Aika's sure. She simply sat down on a nearby chair. The doctor she was helping arrived in the room. He saw that the young woman looked incredibly defeated. Bayoma, Miss Kiryu, you better go home. It's already late, and your shift is almost over. He says, looking a little tired and sweating. Aika, but Hebikawa-sensei, I still have half an hour here. I can still try something. Bayoma, unfortunately, we're not getting anything new. It's the decay algorithm, Aika-san. Until we solve it, we won't be able to complete the serpent cure. Besides, you're spending far more time here than necessary, and I'm only allowing this because I was able to raise your salary. Aika, but we're close. I just need to spend a few more hours here or use other methods. Maybe if we use some kind of radiation, try to map ancestral genes of similar organisms, we can improve the AI to create better simulations, try combinations of chemicals to activate regeneration mutations, go through trial and error. Bioma Aika. I told you, you need to go to your. He almost fell to the ground, but caught himself. The girl was a little scared and helped him sit up. He looked sweaty and was breathing hard, but he had enough strength to take a bottle out of his pocket and take some pills. The brown girl looked at him worriedly as he seemed to stabilize, breathing normally again as he stood back up. He looked at her guiltily as he looked away. His secret had been revealed. Bioma, I didn't want anyone to find out about this. I could doctor what's happening to you. Bioma, a few years ago, I was out of the country for research in Asia, but after some complications I had to eat the meat of a snake I had killed. Only, well, they had parasites of the genus Armilifer, which they are immune to, but in humans, Aika causes porocephaliasis, also known as human visceral pentostomiasis. Bioma, impressive as always. Those little bastards have pierced some of my organs. My left kidney, my liver, part of my digestive system, and some of my muscles. And unfortunately, there are so many of them that I can't do a regular treatment. But with the serum, Aika, you could become immune to them. Not only that, you could even kill the parasites and expel them from your body. It wasn't just a cure for people, it was for you. Bioma, yeah, I'm sorry for lying to you, Aika. But I'm a desperate man, and I thought that with your help I could complete this project. My miracle serum. Aika, no. I understand. You have a family and you don't want to be taken out of their lives. But why don't you want my help anymore? Bioma, because I don't want you to ruin your life. I'm basically a living dead man and I don't want you to waste a year or two of your teenage life just so that when I die your work will be worthless. Aika, that's not fair. You have so much to contribute, so much to live for. Your children's birthdays are in a month, and now they have to grow up without their father? That's not. She simply threw her arms up in defeat. Bioma, I'm sorry, Aika-san. But I think time isn't on our side. Aika looked away from him as she looked at the hologram of DNA and the snakes. She closed her eyes and thought as her mind worked to find a solution to this problem. The girl couldn't just give up. This wasn't just a historic job, it was something that could save lives. Starting with the one next to her. But unfortunately, she was tired. Aika, alright, I'm going home. See you tomorrow, Hebikawa-sensei. She says as she goes to get her things to leave. Bioma, I won't be here tomorrow, and you know that very well. He says, being ignored. As she rode her bike, she had to force herself to pay attention to the road. When she arrived, her parents were in the living room and her mother told her that they had left food in the fridge for her to heat up. But she simply slurred that she had eaten earlier and apologized. She simply laid on the bed defeated as her mind raced with possibilities for the serum's completion. Aika, damn, what can I do? She was stuck in a dead end, with no entrance. She quickly became angry and looked at her computer, frowning. It wasn't much compared to the ones she had access to at Fuyuki Industries, but issei had modified it to support 4 powerful processors, 5 RAMs, and 2 strong graphics cards. He was more than enough for that. Aika, screw rest. She says, quickly running downstairs. Within seconds, she came back with 3 cans of energy drinks and drank half of one in a few seconds. Aika, let's get to work. She says as she starts typing. Natural cross-species. Organisms capable of integrating genetic material from other species into their own DNA. Parasites that absorb genes from their hosts. Aika, the parasitic plant Cuscuta absorbs genes from its hosts. This process, known as horizontal gene transfer, occurs when the parasite acquires genetic material from the host and incorporates it into its own genome. Cuscuta has been shown to possess 108 genes of host origin that function in its nutrient-absorbing structures. Extremophile microorganisms that adapt their DNA with rapid mutations. Aika, thermophiles live in high temperatures, for example, hot springs. Halophiles thrive in environments with high salt concentrations, for example, salt lakes. And acidophiles grow in low pHs, for example, acidic soils, rare hybrid species that occur naturally in the wild. Aika Grollar bear, Korwolf, Narluga and Holfen are good examples. She continued typing after copying down more information about what she needed. She paused for a moment as she looked over some notes she made about the serum and the simulations. She tried to find something, but thought it would be better to use Fuyuki Industries equipment. But the goal. Next day, she skipped class and went straight to FI. She didn't care much about school and simply started working on the serum and the decay algorithm. She analyzed most of the simulations and looked closely at the mutation pathways the serum would cause. One thing she is not proud of is using her boss's name so that the company could provide her with some samples of the cross species to help her. Besides, it was a day that she knew he would not be in the company building. Some cells absorbed the new information and changed in a controlled way, which was extremely promising. But others went into genetic meltdown or developed monstrous mutations, showing that the algorithm was still unstable. Not every cell could be forced to regress and reorganize at the same time. You have to calculate precisely which genes should be silenced, which ones should be activated, and in what sequence. But it all seems so chaotic. She began comparing the results of the simulations with the genetic material of these other naturally occurring interbreeding species while analyzing the mutations and patterns that each species' DNA underwent to survive. Wait, some of these patterns seem like a predictable order. They're chaotic and complex, but maybe if I figure out a pattern. As the hours passed, she did notice a pattern. In fact, they reminded her of chaotic networks, but with moments of predictable order. They didn't just mutate, they followed complex mathematical patterns as they modified their genetic code to survive. Intrigued, Aika began modeling these mutations using advanced mathematics. After some research, she began using chaos theory equations, dynamical systems models, and evolutionary mutation algorithms. Data was moving back and forth on the holographic screen, DNA strands were changing and being swapped out, and the serum formula was changing from second to second. Instead of cutting and pasting genes as was standard, the algorithm was inducing the cell to revert its genetic state to a more plastic, less fixed level and accept the new genetic information spontaneously. Over time, and after drinking a few cans of energy drinks, she identified formulas that described when and how certain mutations stabilized in crossbreeding organisms. She continued to edit them as time went on. Each formula she made became more certain, and the mutations proved to be more stable. Some cells absorbed the new information and changed in a controlled way, which was extremely promising. The chances of the cells going into genetic meltdown or mutating monstrously were gradually decreasing as she typed and changed the algorithm more and more. When she stopped at one point, the girl began running more simulations with the serum to find out how the changes affected its effects. As it ran, she sat waiting and began to fall asleep. After almost an hour had passed, a voice woke her up with a small cry. "Bioma Aika?" She gave a startled scream and fell out of her chair. "Aika, what? What happened?" "Bioma, I'm the one asking. What are you doing here? It's 2:21 p.m. Is it still your college time?" He looked at the simulations being run and how much more advanced they were from before. He looked at the girl and then at the simulation. "Bioma, what? How is that possible? You did it?" "Aika, yeah. I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I knew I could do more, so I did some research and got inspired by natural hybrids. Then I used chaos theory along with mutation algorithms and dynamical systems to predict the possible paths that the mutations caused by the serum could take and, Bioma Aika. Listen, I'm very, very proud of what you did here for me today. But I want you to go to your school or your home." "Aika, what? Why?" "Bioma, because you lied and misused company equipment. I can say that we agreed for you to do this because we agreed verbally. But if anyone catches you doing this without me around, you could be fired or face civil liability." At that moment the girl froze and she started to have an outburst. "Aika, oh God, God. What am I going to do? I have to hide, I need to hide. My parents can't find out about this. My mother is going to kill me and my father is going to take his police car and personally take me to prison. I can't go to prison, I haven't even lived enough yet." She is interrupted by her superior. "Bioma Aika-san, that's exactly why I want you to leave. You need to rest. Thanks to you, the project has made great progress, so from now on, leave it to me. Go home and get some sleep, you deserve it. Aika right, but I'm going to Co-Academy. My friends can teach me what they learned in class. They can also cover me in case I fall asleep, she said, a little embarrassed. I'm sure that will do. I need to get a few things, she says, and the young woman starts to grab her things and prepares to leave. Without the scientist noticing, she took a pen drive with the simulation information so she could complete her work. She walked calmly, until the scientist called her again. Oh, and Aika-san, thank you again. And I'm not just speaking as a scientist, I'm speaking as a person. Aika, I'm the one who's grateful for this opportunity, she says as she leaves. I'm proud of this girl. He looks at the algorithm in development. Just a little more and we'll make history. Time skipped 2 days later. Before Issei created his first costume, he needed a homemade costume. Not only for nostalgia's sake, but also for money reasons. He would save up to get the materials. It was something simple: black gloves, a red t-shirt with a small spider painted on it, a dark blue hoodie with a red spider design on the back, sweatpants, and sneakers, in addition to his red mask, which had swimming goggles on it, and his web shooters on his wrists. Looking at himself in the mirror, he found it acceptable for now. But something bothered him a little about his appearance. Issei, I think I'll invert the colors in the final design. I don't want to have to look too much like Parker. He went to his desk to grab his last resort, the first version of his utility belt. It was silver with pockets containing his web cartridges, as well as a flashlight in the middle of the belt. He would still think of a good design for the spider signal. Issei, now, let's find an alley and climb up a building. Break of time and space. Issei was on top of one of the buildings in Ko, an apartment complex that the city had and that was close to other large buildings. In fact, the city itself seemed much larger than Issei remembered. Issei, multiversal and cosmic shit maybe, he thought calmly. He stood on the edge and saw the ground incredibly far away. He saw cars passing by along with people who were still awake at that time of night. He walked to the other edge of the building and looked at the larger one in front of him. He took a deep breath and mentally prepared himself. Issei, let's go. He starts running. When he reached the edge of the building, he jumped as his feet stepped onto the edge and faced the building in front of him as he reached out and pressed his fingers on the launcher button. Thwip! A thread of web quickly reached the top of the building he aimed at, and holding tightly onto the web with both hands, he began to try to balance himself as he swung. He struggled a bit as he went around the building. He let go of the web and shot another one to go somewhere else. He continued to struggle a bit as he tried to move the way he wanted. Unfortunately, he started to fall towards a restaurant, and to avoid causing trouble, he let go of the web and fired another one so he could land on a pole. As soon as he got close, he managed to grab the light stand and used it to swing and launch himself towards another. After a few jumps, he took a bigger jump and used his web to get back up higher and between the buildings. After a few minutes, he was starting to get used to it, and was moving a little better. He launched himself to the top of a building and began to run along it to make a jump and shoot another web to climb another building and began to run along the wall of it until, upon reaching the edge, he jumped and turned in the air, so that he could shoot his web on the edge on the other side of the building and, upon landing, use this as momentum for another jump. He did a somersault in the air and saw the bright full moon. Issei, that's so cool. He dove into the air for a few seconds and shot out a web once more as he began to swing back. Time and space break. Next day, Fuyuki Industries. Aika POVs on. We were once again refining the decay algorithm. Hebikawa Sensei was much more alive, at least in personality, as we tested more and more variations of the algorithm and the DNA strand holograms mutated and were destroyed over and over again. He complained to me about staying up all night again, but the algorithm development was progressing faster, so he was forced to focus on that. Hebikawa Sensei tried increasing the amount of snake DNA a bit, as well as using a bit more than one sample from different breeds of snakes together. It seemed like a risky thing to do, but it helped tremendously and sped up our work. We were able to increase the chance of success from 24% to almost 70%, but it was still causing mutations that would immediately lead to death. After a few more attempts, I started focusing solely on developing the decay algorithm to limit mutations, and after a few hours, extensive mathematical calculations, and a few liters of coffee, I had a breakthrough. Aika Hebikawa Sensei. Sensei. I've made a huge breakthrough. I say, running to apply the algorithm. Algorithm update accepted. Running new simulation. The snake DNA strands were shown alongside images of a human and snakes. The snake DNA fused with the human body, and as the simulations ran, several mutations appeared in the hologram of the human body. Failure, 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 processing. Aika, come on. Bioma, please. Within minutes, the result finally arrived. Simulation successful. Immunity to parasites and poisons proven. Vital signs stable. Blood pressure normal. Risk of immediate mutations minimal. Aika, it worked. Bioma, I can't believe it really worked. He says, starting to smile. You did it, Aika. Aika, we did it. Now we can not only help others. We can heal you. Bioma, yes, he puts his hand on her shoulder. Thank you for everything, Aika. I appreciate you very much, as a scientist and a person. Aika, okay. I say, blushing a little. Now, what do we do with this? Bioma, we will test the serum. We will have to test it on animals that have been bitten by snakes, and then we will test it on humans. With that, the world will change for the better. Aika, I know it will. My phone beeps. Oops, it's my appointment. I should go home. Bioma, sure, sleep well. I'll have to notify my superiors, but tomorrow promises to be a great day. As I left, I could see and hear Hebikawa Sensei turning his gaze back to the hologram and the entire project that had been made. He was at peace and tranquil. His future seemed his again. Bioma, fate can be changed, he says with a smile. I just smile at this as I see how much good I have done in his life by helping him. I leave and get ready to go back home. I have great news for my family. They will be so happy. If everything goes well, nothing will ruin tomorrow. Aika POVs off. Time break. Bioma was tense as he tried to explain his points to the company's own CEO, who was now in his lab. Daigo Fuyuki. He was a frighteningly calm-looking man, but whenever he spoke to someone in particular, he seemed to leave others with immense dread. The same dread Bioma felt right now. Among them, a table with a syringe with a light green serum. Daigo, have the effects been proven? Bioma, I've repeated the simulations dozens of times, and the chances of causing adverse problems are very low, but we'll still need to conduct tests on animals. Daigo, still? No human DNA was used in the simulations? Bioma, yes, but that's just the immediate effects, not the long-term ones. We don't know what would actually happen to someone who has a specific genetic problem or mutation or who isn't old enough to receive it. Daigo, then find out Hebikawa. He looked at the syringe, quickly picked it up, and analyzed it as he moved it around in his hand. Daigo, do you know why I chose you to join my company's team, Bioma? Because not only are you a great scientist, but you're also a man who's grasping at any opportunity to save his life. A desperate man. A desperate father. Bioma simply lowered his head and remained silent as his boss glared at him coldly. Even before he was hired, he knew very well that he was just a means to an end, a step on a ladder for Daigo Fuyuki's ascent. Both with the business side, but as a scientist, socially, and even power and society in general. Bioma, I understand, Fuyuki-sama. Daigo, you have 10 days. I expect results. If not, say goodbye to your normal life and your toys. He says, leaving the syringe with Bioma. The man simply stared at the syringe with the serpent cure. His serum created with years of research and the help of Aika, his apprentice. He simply rubbed his forehead as he felt his blood pressure rise. Time and space break. Next day, Ko Academy. Aika was bouncing. It might seem childish and even a stupid action, but she was too happy to care about what other people thought. Aika, that feeling, it's pride. It's superiority. Those weaklings are just radiating their jealousy and wounded pride just because I, the size scout pervert, not only witnessed but helped create a revolutionary component in the field of genetics. Of course, she wasn't generalizing. She was still going to share this with her 3 idiot friends. She could be being stupid or petty, but she wanted to celebrate so badly. Her family had already congratulated her, and, although they didn't understand at first, when she said it was a serum to create immunity against any type of snake venom, the pride was very clear in her eyes. But of course she would share some of this with her trio of idiotic and very trustworthy friends. Sure, she talked more with issei compared to the other two, but they still had good physiological and intellectual dialogues. Flashback on. Matsuda guys, you won't believe it, I'm going out with a super hot girl. Aika, oh, I like to hear funny stories, no lie. Matsuda, no seriously, I'm talking to a girl on a dating app and she's been paying me a lot of attention. Motohama, ha ha ha. Is that the one with brown hair and green eyes? A little older? Matsuda, yeah, that's right, the one who looks like she's about 25 years old. Issei, that sounds like a scam. Matsuda, because she is a call girl. I saw her on another app and she is 30 years old and has had a lot of plastic surgery. Motohama, what? No, she's 25 and she's studying at another academy. But it seems like something happened because she's moving to another city. So we won't be able to meet in person. That's why I suggested a long-distance relationship. Aika, now it's getting interesting. Matsuda guys, you should have seen it. She charged me almost 7,000 yen for the full service. Too bad I mentioned that I knew Motohama, then she got defensive. Motohama, oh my gods. Guys, I swear, I'm telling the truth. Matsuda, well, I'm also telling the truth. She's a call girl and this idiot is being made a fool of. Motohama, first, I'm not a fool. And second, you can't swear you're telling the truth either. There's only one truth. Issei, well, not exactly. The three, huh? They look at him as if he were drunk. Issei, look, if my intuition is correct, you two will never see this girl-woman again, and you will never be able to prove which one is right. So if you, Matsuda, found her on an app that said she was a call girl, that is your truth, and if Motohama, who found her on another app, says she is a student from another city, that is his truth, and both are valid until it is proven which one is actually right. The three stopped staring at him and began to ponder word by word Hayate's strange argument, which surprisingly had some strange logic that made it make sense. Motohama and Matsuda, what unbalanced wisdom. Aika, is this what happens when a man goes more than a year without masturbating? Issei, how did you notice that? Flashback off. Aika, I love those three idiots. They're like little brothers. Well, most of them know, Kiryu. It was just a phase, you don't have a crush on Hayate. As she shook her head, she noticed the duo of her idiot friends without the aforementioned third member. She found it a bit strange, but let it go for now. Issei always arrived either earlier or later than them. Aika, hey there, idiots. Where's the perverted alpha? I have some very good news to tell you and I want him present. Matsuda, good morning to you too, Kiryu. Motohama, Issei was with us earlier, but he joined early. Aika, okay, I'll share it later. I really want to see your faces when you find out. Both, she wants to show off something. Issei, POV on a little later. Okay, Hayate, you're basically a prototype spider, and now you need to train to improve your skills. I need to improve my swing, how I use webs, get more materials, have a better fighting style, have more equipment, and other things. And that's just on the spider side. On the man side, I still needed a job, even though that was almost guaranteed, to have a good income, to define a stable routine between my two lives, to find ways to keep my identity a secret, and one of my main pillars, to gain more knowledge. Intelligence and knowledge were some of the greatest powers anyone could have in any universe. Not to mention that it would help with both of my identities and give me a certain independence in both as well. I can accept training, but I refuse to be dependent on other people's equipment. Well, other than focusing on the things I need to, I found last night to be strangely quiet. Granted, it's not as big as New York, but there must have been some robbery or something small. At least the big problems wouldn't arrive any time soon. After doing some research, I realized that some of the names associated with a regular Spider-Man don't seem to exist. Maybe it's because the universe has adapted to me and my villains will appear right here instead of New York, which might complicate things a bit. But maybe I can hold my own as long as I can identify the similarities. Well, there's no point in worrying about that at the moment, since what I need to prepare I would have to steal if I don't have much patience. Fortunately, I should have enough time. I just need to start from the bottom, create a foundation for my name to grow, be recognized in the future, climb step by step until I become someone influential. I don't think I'll create a Hayate Industries anytime soon, nor will it be a very big thing. But that doesn't mean I can't try. The best I can do is wait until I actually get employed and then learn everything I can at Kamizawa Robotics to both improve my technology skills and give me some business knowledge. But despite this, I also need knowledge in the area of biology and genetics if I want to increase my spider powers in the future. If there is one thing I will not allow, it is to be content with my current level. Luckily, I have a friend who is very good at both of these things. Speak of the devil and his minions. Issei POV off. Aika, hello Issei, my dear and oldest friend, she says, putting her arm on the brown-haired man's shoulders. Issei, you're strangely happy and it scares me. Matsuda, no, she's just being arrogant. She's been like this for a long time, and she hasn't even said what happened to make her like this. Aika simply stuck out her tongue and smiled again. Aika, well, now that we're all together, I'd like to share a big achievement in my work. Motohama, okay, so what did you do? Did you get a rabbit pregnant with a squirrel? Aika, better. I helped create a serum. But not just any serum, it's a solution that when injected into a patient, will make them immune to snake venom and parasites that snakes have in their bodies and to which they are immune. Matsuda, calm down, are you serious? Aika, seriously. Hebekuma-sensei named his serum Snake Cure, and I helped him finish it, she says very proudly. Motohama, okay, and what makes this serum different from existing antidotes for poisons? Aika, what's different is that snake genes were used to create the serum instead of venom. The serum basically puts a bit of snake into another living being to give the patient immunity. Issei, wait, you helped create a serum that lets people become part snake? Aika, well, I shouldn't be saying this, but basically, I didn't sign any document to keep quiet, but I can talk to you guys a little bit about it. Issei, but the basis of the serum is to integrate snake DNA into human beings? Aika, basically. Of course, our main problem was letting human DNA be superior to foreign DNA, but we managed to solve that, she says confidently, and just from all that arrogance and smug smiles, Issei was absolutely sure. Issei, damn. This shit is gonna go wrong. Thanks for listening to my video. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe and comment below your favorite part. Sayonara, see you in the next video.